I had a toothache for 3 days, but the problem is that I am afraid of dentists. But my husband insisted as the pain was strong I went, but through stress I forgot to take the money, and when he finished work I went to get a portmanteau, but it was not there, and I told him that I forgot it at home. He didn't believe me, but I didn't believe it, and offered to pay in another way, and before I find out what way, let me tell you the background. Sometimes I wonder when I first disappeared. Not physically. Not all at once, but gradually, like sugar dissolving in tea, leaving only sweetness behind, but no trace of what was whole. Being a good wife looks beautiful from the outside. It's tidy, predictable, polite. We have a decent life, my husband and I. There's warmth in the walls, meals on the table, shared laughter when it's expected. He remembers my birthday. He kisses my forehead every morning like it's a tradition, not a desire. He folds laundry without asking. He makes coffee just the way I like it, too sweet, too weak. No one would look at us and say something's wrong. That's the trick. The ache hides in places no one checks. I do everything I should. I smile when I'm supposed to. I nod at the right pauses. I laugh at the right jokes, even when they aren't funny anymore. There's a rhythm to this life, smooth, unbroken, like a song on repeat that no one bothers to change. But at night, when he turns over and his back faces me like a polite curtain, I lie awake and wonder if this is what peace is supposed to feel like, a silence so complete it almost hums. And for a long time, I told myself it was enough. But pain has a strange way of revealing truths. Mine began with a tooth. It started small. A dull throb, easy to ignore. I told myself it was just sensitivity, a nerve acting up, a signal I could silence with tea, with patience, with pretending. 3 days. That's how long I lasted. By the third night, the pain bloomed. Sharp, hot, insistent. It woke me at 3:17 a.m. I sat on the edge of the bed with my hand pressed to my cheek, rocking slightly like a child, trying not to cry. Not from the pain itself, but from the shame of it. The helplessness. My husband stirred, switched on the lamp. His voice was soft, concerned. "You need to go." I didn't argue. I nodded. He made the appointment the next morning. Told me he'd drive me if I was too anxious. I said I'd be fine. I wasn't fine. The waiting room was sterile in a way that made my skin itch. Too clean, too white, too quiet. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, clenching and unclenching my fingers. The receptionist didn't smile. No one ever does in these places. Pain doesn't invite warmth. He came to get me himself. The dentist. And that surprised me. He looked unexpected. Not in some dramatic, cinematic way. Just real. Not old. Not too young. Eyes a little too steady. A voice too smooth. The kind of man who notices things and says very little. "You're nervous," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded, managing a thin smile. "It'll be quick. Nothing major." And it was. The procedure itself, almost disappointingly simple. A clean fix, just like he promised. But my body didn't calm. My hands trembled even as the numbness spread. When it was done, he asked if I needed a moment. I nodded again, grateful for the excuse to sit still and breathe. Then came the moment. I reached into my bag, dug deeper. My fingers found receipts, tissues, my phone. No wallet. The cold spread faster than the anesthesia. My breath caught. I looked up at him. I think I forgot my wallet," I said. He didn't frown, didn't scold, just tilted his head slightly, as if trying to read something behind my eyes. "It's okay," he said. "You can settle it later." But the words didn't ease anything. They made it worse. Because the truth was, I hadn't just forgotten, I had panicked. I had prepared for the pain, but not for the vulnerability after. The awkwardness of being cared for. The humiliation of needing I'll transfer, I said quickly. Or bring cash tomorrow. With everything I must have. He raised his hand gently, not to hush me, but to pause the spiral. It happens, he said, though not often. And then he added quietly, there are other ways. I looked at him. He wasn't smiling. The words hung there, a half joke, half dagger. My throat went dry. I should have left, brushed it off, apologized again, and left. But I didn't. Something in me leaned into that pause, that silence between us. Maybe there's another way I can make it right. I don't know why. I don't know how. But I know I meant it. He didn't respond right away. Just looked at me with the kind of gaze that dissects, peels back, studies. Not with cruelty, with precision. Then he stood. Come back tomorrow, he said. He turned to leave. I sat there for a moment longer, the numbness in my mouth nothing compared to the heat rising under my skin. When I left, the sky was overcast, the wind sharper than I remembered. At home, my husband asked if it went okay. I said yes. He kissed my temple, told me I was brave, and I smiled. But inside, I was shaking. Not from the pain, from everything that hadn't happened yet. I didn't sleep that night. Not from the pain. That was gone, dulled by the procedure. But something deeper remained wide awake beneath my skin. I lay next to my husband, listening to his breath steady, slow, the rise and fall of his chest like a tide I couldn't swim in anymore. I kept thinking about the dentist's voice, calm and unbothered. The way he said, come back tomorrow. He hadn't asked for anything, not directly, and yet something had been exchanged. Not words, not action, but something else. An understanding, dangerous in its clarity. Morning came too bright. The sheets felt too heavy. My husband shifted beside me and murmured something half asleep, something forgettable. I stayed still, eyes open, watching shadows move across the ceiling like clouds across water. My mind kept circling back to yesterday's silence. The air in that room, his voice, my reaction. When I finally got up, the floor felt cold under my feet. The kind of cold that travels upward. I made coffee. I didn't drink it. I burned the toast. My hands trembled when I tried to butter it. I stood in front of the kitchen window, watching a cat weave through the neighbor's fence, envying its aimless purpose. I told myself I would clean the living room. I told myself I would read. I told myself I would forget. But instead, I found myself in front of the mirror, fingertips grazing the slope of my throat. I applied makeup slowly, like I used to when I was younger, when attention meant anticipation. I brushed my hair into shape with more care than the occasion demanded. There was no occasion. That was the point. I chose a blouse I hadn't worn in months. Pale blue, soft at the collar. Something that felt accidental, but wasn't. I didn't say goodbye to my husband when I left. He was in the shower. I let the door close quietly behind me. Outside, the wind had picked up. The leaves scattered in loose spirals along the sidewalk. Everything felt too vivid, too loud. A truck backfired in the distance and I flinched, even though I knew better. I took the long route to the clinic. Not out of hesitation, out of need. I needed the steps. I needed the waiting. I passed the bookstore where I'd once bought a novel and never finished it. I walked through a narrow alley that smelled of old fruit and wet cardboard. A woman passed me, pulling a cart full of laundry. Our eyes met briefly. Hers were tired. I reached the clinic. The glass door reflected me before I touched it. My face looked unfamiliar. Not different, just more awake. Like something beneath the surface had begun to rise. I stepped inside. The reception area was quieter than the day before. No patients, no hum of conversation, just the faint ticking of a wall clock. He appeared from the hallway, as if he'd been waiting. "You're early," he said. I wasn't sure I would come. He tilted his head, studying me. "But you did." I nodded. The words stuck in my throat. "No appointment today," I added. He said nothing, just gestured toward the door at the end of the hall. I hesitated. "You can leave," he said. "Right now. And it will be as if nothing happened." But something had already happened. Yesterday. Last night. This morning. Inside me. I stepped forward. The hallway was narrow. The air changed as we moved down it. Cooler. Still. As if the walls themselves had memory. The room he led me to wasn't the one from yesterday. No reclining chair. No instruments. Just a plain room with a couch, a small table, closed blinds. A coat rack in the corner. A bottle of water. He closed the door behind us. He didn't lock it. That felt important. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He stood across the room, not close, not far. His hands were in his pockets. His shoulders were relaxed. I sat. He didn't move. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was full. When he finally stepped forward, it wasn't abrupt. It was gradual, careful, as if he was measuring each breath. He sat beside me, but didn't reach. Just sat. "You're here," he said. "I don't know why." "Yes, you do." I looked at him, and he was looking at me in a way no one had in years. Not hungrily, not with expectation, but with attention. That kind of gaze that makes your pulse scatter. "This isn't about the money," I whispered. "No, it never was. You knew that." His hand moved slowly, not toward me, toward the space between us. Open palm, facing up. Not a command. An invitation. I placed my fingers on his. My hand trembled. His didn't. He didn't pull me closer. He didn't need to. The moment folded in on itself. He lifted my hand and pressed it to his chest, just over his shirt, just beneath his collarbone. I felt the thrum of his heartbeat. Steady. Certain. "Breathe," he said. And I did. Not the breath of a wife. Not the breath of a woman who lived between chores and dinner plans and checklists. The breath of something waking up. We didn't speak again. Words had no place here. They would only reduce what was rising. Yes, he reached for me. But not in ways that take anything. Only give. Not in the ways you explain. His fingers brushed my wrist, the curve of my neck, the edge of my blouse, where fabric met skin. Each gesture held more than it seemed. Each pause a decision. I felt I didn't fall into him. I fell into a kind of knowing, into the sharp, unbearable truth of being seen. I don't know how long we sat like that. An hour. A year. Time lost all direction. When I stood to leave, he didn't stop me. "You'll come back," he said. I didn't answer. He didn't need me to. Outside, the world had not changed. But I had. At home, my husband asked if I wanted soup or pasta. I chose soup. I stirred it without tasting. I asked about his day. He told me about a meeting that had run long. We spoke like always. That night, I lay beside him, my body quiet. But inside, something had caught fire. During the day, I am a wife. That sentence used to feel simple. Now it hangs in the air, heavier than it should be. I am a wife. That means something. It means roles, rituals, a kind of choreography. It means laundry cycles and breakfast habits and Sunday errands. In the daylight, I follow that dance. I stir sugar into his coffee without needing to ask. I pack his lunch without thought. We discuss bills, schedules, who should call the plumber. We kiss hello and goodbye with the same practiced ease we use to close cabinet doors. Our life runs on memory. He thinks I am stable. He thinks I am calm. He doesn't know I flinch every time he reaches for my hand, Not because I don't love him, but because I do, in some way, and because I am lying to him every time I smile. I tell myself it's under control. That what happens when I'm not with him is separate. A different room. A sealed box. I go through the motions. Fold shirts with practiced creases. Vacuum with deliberate straight lines. I count spoons when I unload the dishwasher. Little anchors to hold the edges of my mind. But then night comes. And in the night, something shifts. I become a shadow. Not in the sense of hiding, but in the sense of slipping beyond outlines. I move through my house and nothing quite fits. My feet are too loud on the floorboards. The light too yellow. His breathing too slow, too trusting. And in that stillness, I replay every glance, every breath, every silent pause I shared in another room, with another man, behind a locked door I closed willingly. The first few times I returned to him, I told myself it was over. I walked home fast. I breathed deep. I opened the front door like it was a church confessional. I told myself I could bury it in warmth, in dinner conversations, in shared laughter about TV shows. But the warmth didn't reach, and I kept going back. At first it was sporadic, unpredictable. A few days of silence, and then, when I couldn't bear the weight of my own skin, I'd find my way to him again. It didn't take much. He never reached out, never asked, never pulled. He simply waited. And that waiting made it worse. Because it wasn't desperation. It was certainty. He knew I'd come back. And I did. Each time felt different. The air changed. Sometimes there were words. Sometimes silence. Sometimes I cried after. Once I laughed. And every time I promised myself, this is the last. And then the ache returned. And the next time came faster. I lie to my husband now like I breathe, softly, without needing to think. A rearrangement of hours. A small shift in tone. A phone call I say I forgot to make. A walk that took longer than expected. He never questions me, and that makes it worse. He trusts me, not blindly, but wholly. He has no reason not to. I never gave him one. Until now. He thinks I'm tired because of hormones. He thinks I'm distracted by errands. He makes me tea in the evenings and doesn't notice that I don't drink it. He touches my back gently when he walks past me in the hallway. Sometimes I want to fall into that touch. Sometimes I feel like it burns. One afternoon, I return home and forget to take off the perfume he doesn't know. He hugs me from behind in the kitchen. I freeze. "You smell different," he says. I laugh too loudly. "New sample from the store. Didn't like it." He nods, says nothing, but I feel the hesitation. I start to notice his pauses. The way he watches me when I'm not looking. The way he checks the calendar when I mention appointments. Nothing direct. But I feel the shift. I tell myself I can handle it. I can keep both lives afloat. But the weight grows. I lie to friends too. I cancel plans. I dodge questions. I forget birthdays. I post old photos so no one asks where I've been. I write journal entries that trail off halfway through, unfinished sentences, ink blotted where tears didn't fall but almost did. At night, I lie beside my husband and hear his breathing. I memorize the shape of his hands again. I count the freckles on his shoulders. I try to remember why we used to laugh until we couldn't breathe. I try to remember when I stopped missing him. But I never stopped loving him. That's the part that twists the knife. I love him, and I am still lying. One evening, as I pack away leftovers, he says, "Do you think we should take a weekend trip? Just us, like we used to." My hands tremble. "Sure," I say. "That might be nice." He smiles. That quiet, hopeful smile he used to wear when he first met me. As if I am still the girl who used to laugh into his shoulder. But I'm not. Not entirely. I lie now without thinking, like a habit worn into muscle. That night, I wake up sweating. A dream I can't remember. My heart races. I go to the bathroom and stare at myself in the mirror. The woman I see there is both stranger and twin. She has my face, but her eyes hold secrets. She looks back at me, unflinching, and I realize I'm not lost. I chose this. I chose to lie because it made me feel alive again. He didn't find out through a fight. There was no confrontation, no shattering scream in the hallway, no slammed doors. That wasn't how we operated. Our life had always been quiet, orderly, respectful. Even in endings, we followed form. It came softly, in the way that real endings always do. It came like a breath held too long, like a pause in conversation that stretches 1 second too far. We were in the kitchen. I was slicing apples for a tart I wasn't planning to finish. He was standing near the sink, scrolling absently through his phone. It was an ordinary day. The kind of day that would never stand out in memory until it did. He set the phone down, looked at me, not harshly, not sadly, just directly. "I know," he said. I didn't ask what he meant. There was a silence then. Not heavy, just full. The kind of silence that has been building for months, collecting in corners, filling drawers. He didn't ask questions. He didn't cry. He didn't beg for details. He didn't accuse. That somehow made it worse. He just nodded and walked out of the room. I stood there for a long time, holding the knife, the apple slices softening on the counter, their edges turning brown. The quiet was unbearable. That night, he didn't sleep beside me. He took the couch, folded himself into the shape of distance. In the morning, he made coffee and left it on the table without a word. He didn't mention anything, and I didn't offer. The days that followed were surreal. He didn't stop being kind. On the contrary, he became gentler. He brought home groceries I liked but hadn't requested. He fixed the squeaky cabinet door. He lit candles during dinner. He asked how I slept. Each gesture felt like a soft goodbye. He wasn't trying to punish me. He was mourning me while I was still in the room. I began to notice his absence even when he was present. His gaze started slipping past me. He no longer reached for my hand in the car. He sat at the far edge of the couch. Once, I reached for his wrist in the night. He didn't pull away, but he didn't move closer either. Then one evening, he left without a word. No note, no explanation. He returned late, smelling faintly of something unfamiliar, a new cologne or wine or someone else's skin. He didn't lie. He didn't confess. He simply undressed in the dark and slipped into bed facing away from me. And in that moment, I understood. This was not retaliation. This was a mirror. We had become two people who once touched with reverence and now lived like foreign ghosts under the same roof. The message came 3 days later. A time, a place, nothing else. From him, not my husband. The other. The one who had touched something buried deep in me and brought it to the surface. The one who never asked for anything but received everything I could not name. A cabin, outside the city. "Come if you want," the message read. No questions. I stared at the screen for a long time. The clock ticked louder. My throat felt thick. That night, I sat beside my husband on the couch. We watched a movie we'd both seen before. He laughed in the right places. I smiled at the screen. Then I turned to him and said, "I need some time. I want to go away for a night." He didn't flinch. He nodded slowly. "Take what you need." I packed lightly. One bag, clothes, a journal, toothbrush. I paused at my perfume, unsure whether to take it. I left it. The drive to the cabin was quiet. The road unwound like a ribbon through trees that blurred past, branches etched against the soft gray sky. I kept both hands on the wheel, gripping too tightly. My chest ached from breathing too shallow. When I arrived, he was already there. He opened the door before I knocked. He looked at me like he always did, with stillness, with knowing. "You came," he said. I nodded. My voice had deserted me. Inside, the cabin was warm. A small fire burned in the hearth. A wool blanket was folded across the armchair. 2 mugs sat on the counter, as if he had believed in this moment long before I had. We didn't embrace. We sat side by side on the floor near the fireplace, our shoulders almost touching. "I'm leaving," he said. "New job. New city. Far." I didn't ask where. He turned his head toward me. "I wanted to see you once more. Not to hold on to anything. Just to close the door." I stared into the flames. "I never expected you to stay. But you changed," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." He exhaled. The sound was soft, like letting go. "I don't want to be your shadow. You never were." The silence that followed was not heavy. It was sacred. We didn't touch. Not at first. We just sat there, breathing, existing beside one another without need. Then he reached out, not to pull me, but to offer something gentle. His fingers brushed mine. I let them. I turned to him slowly, like the earth turning toward light. We didn't speak again. What passed between us that night wasn't about wanting or regret. It was something else, a kind of stillness wrapped in warmth. A farewell that didn't need words. It was like 2 people gently letting go of who they used to be. In the morning, I left before the sun rose. He watched from the window, but didn't wave. I didn't look back. The drive home felt lighter. The world hadn't changed, but I had. When I returned, my husband was in the garden, trimming dead branches. He looked up as I stepped from the car. He nodded once. "Welcome home." And that's when I knew we would not talk about it. We would go on, not as before, but forward. I unpacked in silence. I made tea and actually drank it. I showered, changed the sheets, opened a window. The wind smelled like the sea, even though we lived nowhere near it. That night, I stood in front of the mirror. I saw my own reflection, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't turn away. I saw someone who had burned, who had hurt, who had lied, but also someone who had lived. Someone who had walked through fire and chosen to breathe anyway. I touched my own shoulder, not searching for someone else's hand. This is not the end, I thought. This is the beginning. Not a return. A rebirth.